Hi, this is Kira Davis, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast. Once again, we're joined by Golden Domer and Mr. Blue Deviler, Eric Servone. How you doing, Eric?
Good to be here, Matt. Good to be here.
Eric, you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Is that true?
I'm born and bred.
Born and bred, Eric. Do you remember Cordell Stewart?
Of course I do. Slash.
Exactly, because he's Slash because he played quarterback, receiver,
yep.
special teams.
Yep.
Well, you're in luck. And so is everyone out there in the universe, because today's guest is like the next generation of Slash. It's as if Cordell Stewart was like running with the torch and he handed it over to today's guest, because she is a Renaissance woman. She's a wife, mother, suburbanite. She's a journalist with frequent television appearances. She's been on Stossel, Dr. Phil. She's a regular on KABC Los Angeles. She's the host of the Just Listen to Yourself podcast. She's an advocate for school choice, labor flexibility, Scotch whiskey, and funny people. She's a dog person, but has been known to tolerate cats from time to time. Please welcome the wonderful, the fabulous, the Kira Davis. How you doing, Kira?
Hi, Matt. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing well. And I must say, I'm pretty jealous of you, Kira. I told Eric before the show started how we met. And it was a few years ago. I was doing a series of stand-up shows in South Orange County.
Yeah.
And we just so happened like we were running into each other every time.
I was doing comedy at the time. It was a bucket list item. So I was doing, I had challenged myself to try stand-up comedy for a year. That's what I was doing. I was on the circuit. That's where we met.
She was on the circuit, Eric, and I'd been doing it for probably 15 years at the time. And she goes up there, was hilarious, had stage presence, poise, kind of like everything you look for. And I remember backstage, or whatever, I was like, oh, really funny. Kind of, how long have you been doing that? She's like, that was my second show. I was like, oh, I'm terrible, but I'm glad you.
And every other comic hated you after that.
Yes.
I love stand-up comedy. I'm a huge fan. And the way other people listen to music is the way I listen to stand-up comedy. That's always what's in my ears. That I love the artistry of it. And I always wanted to know what it was like to how do you write a joke? How do you stand in front of people and tell jokes? I stand in front of people and do politics. But one day I was like, wait a minute, I'm a grown woman and this is America, and somebody somewhere can teach me how to do this if I choose to pay them. So I went and found a comedy class and signed up for that and enjoyed it so much. I thought, what would it be like to do the open mic circuit? And so I just signed up for all the open mics I could for like a year, and I had a lot of fun, but it was only ever a bucket list item. I was never going to make it a career. I just wanted to know. I wanted to challenge myself and know what it was like. I had a blast doing it. But man, mad respect to you, Matt, because comedy's a hustle. It's a real hustle.
Thank you. Well, it was a blast working with you. And since then, I've got to learn a little bit more about you. But can you tell the listeners out there, how'd you create your own path?
Yeah, well, I am a political pundit and I am editor at large for one of the nation's largest conservative blogs, redstate.com. And but it
didn't start there, right? Like you were a theater major. You don't just like one day become this famous pundit with a great smile. You have to start somewhere.
Thank you. I live in Southern California. So like everybody here, I don't do just one thing. I do tons of stuff. So I started out life as an actress. I have a degree in theater actually, and was a stage actress in the Midwest for the first part of my adult life. I married pretty young. When I married and had kids, I wanted to stay home with my kids. So and we left the Midwest and came to Southern California. And I just thought, I like film and TV, but the audition process was so grueling that now we can just audition from home. But at the time I had to getting my ass up at like 4 a.m. to make a 9 a.m. audition time in LA, And so I couldn't be a mom and do that. And that's what I wanted to do, was to be home with my kids.
So you prioritized your home life. You would have no chance in Hollywood. They want none of that.
I know. I prioritize my kids. And but for me, it wasn't enough for me to be a stay-at-home mom. I always try to word this carefully, because it wasn't that I thought being a stay-at-home mom wasn't fulfilling, or that I was too smart to be a stay-at-home mom. I thought I wasn't smart enough to be a stay-at-home mom, right? Like, other women were doing this really well. And I still felt like there's a piece of me that I wasn't paying attention to, but I wasn't going to go back to acting. So I said, one day I literally sat down in my kitchen with a notebook, and I was like, I'm just going to write out like all the things that I like to do. Okay. And then I looked down the list, and then I was like, what are any of these things that I could do from home? And then I looked down that list, and I said, are any of these things that I could maybe get paid to do one day? And number one on the list was writing and politics. And I've always been a political person. My parents are godless liberal hippies. And
where did you grow up? You said Midwest, but
I grew up in Canada. I grew up on the East Coast of Canada.
Okay, so Midwest, East Coast, Canada, same thing. I got it.
I'm a nomad. My dad's American. He lived in Washington, D.C., so I would travel back and forth from Eastern Canada there. And then when I left Canada at 18 for good, I went to school in the Midwest, and then I spent like a lot of my adult years in the Midwest. My family, we always were engaged in political discussions, even though as an adult, I came less and less to share their ideologies, but we're very political people, and I love talking politics and debating, and I also like to write. So I thought, well, you know what? It's free to start a blog. Why don't I just start a blog? At that time, blogging was kind of just coming to the surface as a viable thing. And I'm like, oh, I'll just see who reads it. And then people started reading the blog, and then I started getting more and more people were sharing, and I was getting invitations to come and do guest posts at other websites, and that's just how it started getting rolling. And then
what years are we talking? Is this early 2000s?
This would have been 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was 2010 that I got involved in politics, because that was the Tea Party movement, and the Tea Party movement was really pressing hard against Obamacare, which, being a Canadian, I was totally against. So that's kind of what got me interested in like talking more openly about politics, because
and we don't need to go off the rails in healthcare, but my wonderful co-author Wayne Jones on the Greg Giraldo story, he lives in Eastern Canada, and he's made jokes here or there that like some good, some bad about the Canadian healthcare system. What was your experience like?
Well, I guess the good thing about it is that you don't pay for it, but I mean, everybody pays for it. You know, I was there years ago. I don't go back very much, but, and I got gas, and I filled up my rental car before I went back to the airport. And I think at that time, the price tag was $70 to fill this gas tank, and 40 of those dollars was taxes. That wasn't even the fuel. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, that you are paying for this stuff dearly.
Yeah, nothing worth having is free. That's an old saying.
But it's just complicated. In Canada, the thing is like, if you're young, the healthcare system works great.
You're never sick. It's fantastic.
They'll get you. See, everything's done on an algorithm. See, everyone made fun of that death panel.
It's like Google. Yeah. Okay.
I knew that there is such a thing, because there's an algorithm in Canadian healthcare, and it is calculated by your it's a complicated algorithm, but it's your age plus like your body weight plus your health history. It makes you a number, and then the government says, well, this person's probably going to die in 10 years anyway, so we're not going to pay for this advanced cancer treatment. That's the kind of stuff. Like, when you're younger, they'll pay that for you, because it's like you've got your whole life ahead of you. So that's why Canada is so split on it. Like, some people you'll talk to and they'll be like, it's great, I have no problems with it. But those are the people who are young and they're very high up in the algorithm. But people like my mom, who has been dealing with a mystery illness for like a dozen years, the reason why she's dealt with it a dozen years is it takes 2 years to get an MRI.
Wow.
You know, 2 years. I'm not even making that up. Well, 20.
Are there private providers up there, or like
No,
is it?
no.
Oh, okay.
Canada has out. The last I checked, there might be a couple of provinces that do have 2 tiers, but Canada actually banned private because people were going to seek out private care, right? People were traveling to the US. It's actually illegal to travel to the US for medical care. So, yeah, people seek it out, but
we're only here to get drunk. We don't want to improve ourselves. You know, if I end up at the hospital,
yeah,
so
right.
be it.
If I end up,
If I get a little nip and tuck, that was just,
that's what
fun girls weekend out. Yeah.
A lot of seniors will travel to Florida to get their hip surgeries or knee surgeries because in the Canadian healthcare system, you may or may not be eligible for those things, but you can drop, 22 grand cash at an American place if that's, within your ability, and you can fly down to Florida and enjoy some sun and get your knee surgery. So people do that. They label it as vacations.
So was it seen? You brought up the Canadian healthcare system. Was that what largely influenced your beliefs? Because it sounds like you have different points of view from your parents. Like, what do you think contributed to that?
Oh, well, I know what contributed to that.
Well, do tell.
For your listeners, so your listeners know I'm a conservative blogger, and proudly call myself a conservative. I have no issues with it. But I I got married and I moved to Gary, Indiana, where my husband was born and raised. And I served. And for those of you who don't know what Gary is largely inner city. It's a smaller version of Detroit. It was a steel town, and then everything up and left. And it's really just a shell of a city these days. Population, I think, is 81,000, and I think 89% or 90% Black. I think 35% of the population is on welfare, which I think it's higher actually, but that's the number that the government gives you. But anyway, so I moved there. I was very much a liberal when I moved and had all kinds of ideas about Republicans and Democrats and left and right and policy, but I started serving my community. I ran an after-school program, a nonprofit for kids, K through 12, and I was very involved in the education system there, in the public education system, because those were the kids that we were helping. And I realized, I got the chance to see all of the policies that I always supported. I got the chance to see them up close, in action. And I realized that they don't work. So that is when I became a conservative, serving.
So what were some of these policies in action that didn't work, in your opinion?
Well, public school, I was watching fail, and I was watching big unions and big government keep my kids trapped in these schools, and there were choice schools coming in to town. And then I'm watching these Black mayors and Black activists and teachers talking about how Black students don't get a fair shake, and we have this kindergarten to prison pipeline, and yada, yada, yada. And here's these other schools that are coming in, the parents are desperate to go to, and they're shutting down choice schools. They're shutting down school choice programs. I came to realize that, the government entities were totally self-interested. I had the feeling that they were heroes because I grew up with government as your hero.
They weren't just magnanimous types who want what's best for the
weird.
Most amount of people possible.
I was so
That's
crazy.
what I think.
It turned out that they're not. It turned out that they're just as self-interested as anyone.
I've got a lot of learning to do, Kira. Thank you for enlightening me.
So that's where that came about. Yeah, I was just serving my community. School choice is the issue that made me a conservative, and Gary, Indiana is the city that made me a conservative.
Wow. And how has the school choice movement progressed in the last decade or so?
Well, it's really picking up steam now with the pandemic. As it turns out, forcing parents to keep their kids at home with them for 2 years is actually a great motivator for being able to choose where your kids go to school. So it's going gangbusters right now. There's a slate of bills being passed across the country. Some are being vetoed by their Democrat governors. Some are passing. It looks like Georgia's about to pass a really good one. And even in California, we've got a couple versions of a school choice bill trying to make it to the ballot in November. This is California. We'll see how it goes. But the school choice movement was always, to me, a civil rights issue. And as a Black mother, I really feel I mean, just like anybody else, but especially as a Black mother, I feel very protective of civil rights. And I feel like,
Sure.
the idea that our public school system wasn't created for with Black students in mind, with Black students as a part of the success structure. Like when left-wing people say there's systemic racism, I say yes, it's in the public schools. And so that's why we need to, I'm in favor of just scrapping the whole system and starting over, but I know that's unrealistic. So
where do charter schools fit in? Because years ago I worked at a charter school briefly and it was great, but I wasn't sure how that fits into the whole public education
charter
system.
School is a public school.
Okay.
But it uses public funds, but it has a specific charter. That's where that word charter comes from. So it has an agreement with the government that holds it to more stringent standards than a regular public school, which is why your charter schools typically where you are, there are more parents wanting to go there, right? Like they have a more elite status because they have more stringent rules to follow that the public schools don't. And the flip side is that charter schools that don't work, and there are many that don't, they get shut down right away. Where a public school, you never can shut down.
So there's a fear of losing your job.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what a charter school is. Charter school is a public school that has a private option, I guess.
Okay.
So to speak. And then private school options. That's all non-public option. And that's
and you mentioned the systemic racism and looking at the schools. I think a common complaint is a lot of folks are, they're born in a certain area. They may live in a lower income area, but you're bound to go to a public school where you live. And so you're in a sense trapped. It's a little bit harder to then move to a higher income neighborhood that presumably has better public schools. But now with Zoom or online education, I mean, is it realistic here that folks who aren't in the school district they like can get out of it?
Is it a realistic, is school choice a realistic plan, or is it realistic that people will be able to go somewhere else if they have?
Well, I think that would be school choice. Like if you're trapped, say you can't afford to move outside of a zip code you live in, what options do parents have? And what options do you hope they have in the near future? Yeah.
Well, right now, I mean, basically your options are your zip code determines your educational opportunity. Here in my part of South Orange County, we have like school of choice, which means that if my daughter doesn't want to go to our local high school, she has like a choice of 3 or 4 other high schools to go to. Like say she's on cheerleading and she wants to go to San Juan Hills as, cheerleading squad. That's the closest we have to choice here in California right now. But there's all kinds of school choice that is available. But just to break down for any lay people out there, what school choice would be is the money following the child, funding the child, not the system. Right now we fund the system, right? We fund the brick and mortar, we fund the building, we fund the teachers, we fund the administration. But your kid has a dollar amount attached to their head in public school. So
if I know what my kids are worth, I've always been curious.
In California, it's $27,000 a year.
Oh, not bad, not bad.
That's pandemic funds, though. It was lower until 2020. Pandemic funds bumped it like 115% or something. But still, imagine, Matt, that I came to you tomorrow and said, here's $21,000 for one of your children's education, just for each child. What would you do with it? That's what school choice is. Us saying the money, the tax dollars aren't going to your zip code. They're going to you. And then you decide what your kids' needs are. So maybe your kid has special needs and they need to go to a school for the deaf. Right. That is a private school, but has all the bells and whistles that they need. Well, you can do that because you have your $21,000. That's what school choice is. So
it's the voucher model. The money is doled out to the parents who then decide where to allocate it. That's the model
I like, but that's not universal. We're always having to make compromises for the politicians, but there's different ways to do it. One is a a savings account, an educational savings account, which
Okay.
would basically, the government would dump a certain percentage of the public funds into a trust or something, and then you use that like an EBT card or debit card, and you can only use it at like designated private schools or whatever, and that money follows their kid the whole life, but it's not the full chunk. There's vouchers, and then there are other things like magnet programs. There's different ways to do it, but my way is a clean, like, put the money on the kid's head and off you go.
Very nice. So there tends to be more than, one side of each story. I know there's pushback. What are the big arguments against the policy you're talking about?
The number one argument is that offering school choice would defund public schools.
It would. Okay.
But the question has to be, why would anyone say that? Why would you think that to offer someone a choice would mean automatically defunding public schools? You're not taking the money from the public school. You're just taking the ownership of that money out of the bureaucrats' hands and giving it to the parents. So why would that automatically mean that the public school gets defunded?
And there may be certain schools in certain areas that are no longer serving students. And as you pointed out, maybe that's good. And hopefully there'd be new schools that would pop up. I mean, it reminds me of colleges. There's public universities and there's also private. And I think having both of them motivates the other to, provide a better service to their customers.
Choose which one you go. When you get a Pell Grant, the government doesn't say this can only go to a public university.
Well, Eric could choose wherever he wanted to go because he's very smart. And rumor has it, I don't know if we're breaking news here, Eric, but our guest today is a potential Supreme Court.
Yes. Well,
take it away.
I'm glad you brought this up. I actually have officially submitted my name to Congress to be considered for nomination to the.
Wait, someone else didn't do this? It was you that submitted yourself. Okay,
Yeah,
fine. I just want to.
No one else submitted me. I figured, they might not even know who I am. And you might as well just put myself out there, because I went down the list of Biden's requirements for the next Supreme Court justice, and I met every single requirement.
Do tell.
I am Black.
Okay.
I am a woman.
Oh, good job. And
that's
okay.
I'm more than qualified, I guess is my point. And I was talking to a lawyer friend of mine, and she's like, well, you don't have to be a lawyer to be on the Supreme Court. I'm like, what? Oh,
what?
This is game on. Game changer. Why can't I be on the Supreme Court? I mean, in all honesty, why can't I be?
I don't vote, but if I did, I know you said you got rid of those slutty whore boots on the M&Ms, or you're in favor of getting rid. You have an app. You're a constitutionalist.
Well, listen, Matt, here's what I did.
Okay.
Here's what I did. I thought, I'm not just going to be like one of those hoity-toity, like intellectual academic types where I give them my whole resume and here's how I am. Here's all my education. No, I did a video presentation. I said, look, here are my other qualifications for SCOTUS. One, I think that I could redesign the robes. I think that it's time.
Absolutely time.
The green M&M, I don't know if you heard, but the green M&M, we're getting rid of the slut boots, and she's getting
very antiquated.
Sneakers.
I don't like those.
Sneakers like a real lady. And Minnie Mouse is getting rid of her gross skirt, and she's getting pants like any good woman should wear. So why can't the justices get new robes? And I feel like we wouldn't be arguing so much about the opinions that they have if they were wearing more colorful outfits that made us like to look at. You know what I mean? It wouldn't seem so serious.
Yeah, it's kind of like very dull, very boring.
Yeah. And then I have an app also that has the Constitution on it. So I can actually look at the Constitution every day while I'm at work. So, and that's something that I would probably share with the other justices when I got there too.
That's generous.
So we don't have to keep running down the street to look at the original copy.
Dust off an old book. No,
pull out our phones and look at so I don't know. It's just little things like that I think set me apart from other candidates, like Taco Tuesday. I'm going to do that. karaoke
Go for
night.
it.
I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time writing opinions because that's the boring part. And no one likes those. It's like, I will just give a yes or no answer.
I liked RBGs, but other than that, I don't care about people's opinions.
No, it doesn't matter. And who has time? You know, we're all busy. We're all
very busy.
So yeah, I don't know. I made my case and I think I have a very strong case. Again, I would like to point out that I meet the two main requirements for Joe Biden's SCOTUS pick. I am Black and I am a woman.
Do you hear that, world? Kira Davis, get her on the court.
He didn't say anything else. He did not say anything about education, degree, career, character, knowledge, intelligence, academics, moral fallibility. He said nothing about anything. His only two requirements are Black and woman. I meet them.
If you want change, you got to do things differently. All right. Those were methods of the past. He's looking forward.
This is what I'm saying. This is why I should be on Supreme Court.
I agree. Well, this could be a good Supreme Court kind of litmus test. And I think you're qualified. Can someone not vote for Joe Biden and still be Black?
Oh, this is a tough one. I was talking about this with my family and we're torn. My family is torn. Some of my family is like, no.
Not all questions have answers. This might be one of those.
Some of my family just rolls their eyes. Others in my family are like, that's right. I'll tell you, I'm going to be totally honest with you. My family actually is split on this issue. It's more likely in my family you're going to be left wing than right wing. And that's just, I'm a socialist from Canada and I'm Black. So I'm a default Democrat.
Right.
So conservatives are more rare in my family. I'll say that. But we do argue about this issue. We have argued about this issue. Joe Biden saying this. And I would tell you that before this year, that they all were like, yeah, Joe Biden is right. And in the last few months, they're like, Joe Biden is the worst thing that's ever happened to us. And we made a horrible mistake voting for him.
And did you go nanny, nana?
It's really hard not to do the I told you so. So I kind of just make eye motions.
You're smarter than that, big person. So you discuss race and race relations frequently. Kara, do you hope one day to be as powerful a voice in the Black community as Chelsea Handler?
I don't know if I ever could be, because I just don't know if I could sleep with enough Black men. I mean, I've got one in my bed. Yeah, my husband, but
good looking dude.
Yeah, he's a fox. He's a fox, but I just don't know if I could have enough partners to really beat Chelsea Handler.
Fair enough. You know your strengths and your weaknesses.
Yeah, I'll just have to admit I lost this round.
You've made so many television appearances and you're so comfortable in front of the camera. I'm curious, were there any people that you met that surprised you, whether good, bad, and different? Like, because I saw you talked with former President Obama.
Yeah.
And I actually was very impressed. Like, he seemed cool. Like you had a nice rapport, but a lot of times, like, you have 14 seconds or 20 seconds, you have to make a sound bite. Like, yeah. How do you coach yourself to do that?
Well, I like talking, I like talking, but I think it's really just training. It's really just practice. And you have to know where you are. You have to know, I guess this is where my theater training would come in. Like, you have to know your surroundings. So on this podcast, I can sit and talk to you at length about school choice, and I can make all the points that I want because we have time. But if I go on Fox News, I'm not going to have 5 minutes. I'm going to have 14 seconds. So I need to learn to make myself be okay with not getting every point that I want in. And that goes for arguing with other people or debating. You're not going to be able to have the last word. Like, some things you just have to nod and be like, okay, now we're moving to the commercial break, even though I could tear that argument apart if I had the chance. You just have to have discipline. TV is not the medium where you're going to change hearts and minds. That's preaching to the choir. And so you just get your sound bites in and just know that you're doing this for fun. You're offering people like a bit of entertainment on their Monday night or whatever they do. They sit down and watch Fox News primetime, and that's what you're there for, just to offer them little snippets and entertainment, and the hard work gets done, like the persuasion gets done in other formats.
Okay. Good to know. And you're such a nice, good-hearted person. How can you stay that way while having such an active social media presence?
Well, I'm actually a real bitch.
Oh, well, you're an amazing actor then. So.
I'm not that great of a person, but I will say this.
Can we get that clip, Eric? Kara, Dave, I'm not that great of a person. Okay, carry on.
That's gonna be my tagline for my SCOTUS. My SCOTUS merch.
Yeah, you're the SCOTUS merch.
Yeah. Well,
take that, Amy Coney Barrett. You've got merch.
Oh yeah, I'm going there with my whole like campaign basket, like Oscars. Like you come in, and you're like, here's your gift basket. Consider for your consideration, Kira Davis. No, I I am a Christian, and so I often struggle with the imbalance between my faith in a God that I know that requires grace and forgiveness, and my attitude. And I'm always going up and down, back and forth. I try to offer people as much grace as possible because that's been a theme in my life. You know, that's what's been offered to me. So I try not to see people as their political opinions, right? I try to, like, there are some people I'm like, ooh, really, like, I would not be sad if something bad happened to you, but that's, you know, that's more basic, Kira. But I do think that I want to persuade. I've always wanted to be a persuader. So I think humor is really persuasive. So I use humor a lot, and biting wit sometimes, but also sometimes grace is like the most persuasive thing of all. And if anyone is wondering what grace is just making the choice not to treat someone the way you think they deserve to be treated. Okay.
And you've taken your popularity on Twitter and created your own platform. Is that true? Like where you allow for debate and exchange of ideas in a civil format. How has that gone for you? It's a great idea. I just wonder in practice.
I don't use Twitter for debate and argument anymore. I don't. When I first started like 10 years ago or 11 years ago, that's what it was. Like, those were the days of Andrew Breitbart, who really is the father of like conservative media, the late Andrew Breitbart. And that's really what it was. Like, that was a place where you would go to mix it up, exchange ideas. You'd have like big arguments with blue checks or whatever, trolls, and everybody would be yelling at each other and shouting out ideas, but it was in exchange of some type. But now that I have a little more popularity and I am doing more media work, the trolls are really like, there's a lot of them out there. They're just people who have 2 or 3 followers that just like, they're either bots or they're literally just trolling for engagement. And I don't spend any time arguing with those people anymore. I have like a 1 or 2 exchange limit if it's going to make a point of mine. But otherwise, Twitter is useless. Twitter, Facebook is useless for persuasion. It's just, if you want to tell people what you think, that's what it's for. But the idea that you're going to persuade anyone on a social media argument, absolutely not. Give that up.
So tweets don't change minds is what you're saying.
Not that I have heard of. Now, it would be really amazing if someone did pop up one day and be like, you know what, my entire ideology changed because of this one tweet.
Your last post changed my mind. Thank you for illuminating me.
But I have yet to hear anybody say that.
So you have teenage kids. What do you teach them about social media?
Well, my son is an adult now. He's almost 20.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
He's in college, but my daughter is 14. And right now we're like, she wants Snapchat. She already has Instagram, which we let her get at 13. And that was like a big fight, right? Even to make her wait till 13 was like, it's not fair. It's like,
you're the worst, Mom.
Like, what do you need this for? You don't need, you can call anybody you want and you can text anyone you want. So, but we agreed. And then now she's wanting Snapchat. And I'm like, look, you have one, like, you don't need, you're only 14. You absolutely do not need this much personal expression. She doesn't understand. But the one thing that I do make a point to do, because I don't believe in the idea that we can't rein in technology. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I do know some parents who severely limit social media, and great, good for them. My philosophy is that this is a part of life now, and it's something you have to learn how to work with. So I want to teach you how to use it responsibly, how to look at it rather than try to keep you away from it. So my daughter and I have regular conversations about what's real and what's not. And I swear to you, this is a thing that I do on multiple occasions. I show my daughter pictures of the Kardashian family from 10 years ago and pictures of the Kardashian family today. And I tell her, like, look, this is Kylie and this is Kylie. This is Bruce and this is Caitlyn. And by the way, that blew her mind because she's so young. She didn't know Bruce Jenner at all. Like, it blew her
she
mind.
only knew Caitlyn. That's interesting.
Only knew Caitlyn. It blew.
She was very young.
Mind. Almost as traumatizing as when my son found out that Hank is short is a nickname for Henry. He could not process that.
I get it. It's tough to deal with.
He was extremely angry about that one.
So you use the Kardashians for a teachable moment.
Yes,
God bless
I
you.
do.
So that's resourcefulness.
Yeah. Well, look, I say, look at how this is the real them. And then look at all of this is fake. All of this is surgery or makeup or filters, or, I mean, I think Kim Kardashian had a rib taken out, so these aren't real. And these people that you look to social media and you admire, I can't stop you from being aspirational or wanting the things that they have, but they are not people to emulate. They are not real. What they experience in their lives that you see has no basis in reality. So,
right.
Take it all with a grain of salt.
Good advice. And you're working on a book. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm working on a book right now. It's in edits. It's called Drawing Lines, and it is about it's a book to conservatives, and it is about so liberals, please feel free to buy the book, but you will not be happy because it's a message to conservatives. I call it red meat. It's really just red meat. But really what it is it is challenging people to stand up for the things that they want and to go make some noise, because that's the only way you're going to get results. I spent all of 2020 being like every other conservative out there, complaining and whining and how this isn't fair. How come these people can go protest? These people can't. How come these people wear masks and these people don't? And what I realized was that we can complain all we want, but the reason why our ideological opposites are getting what they want is because they're loud and they're making noise and they're the squeaky wheels. And that's a distasteful idea for conservatives, because mostly we're just people who want to go home at the end of a workday and not be bothered with anything. But and regardless of your ideology, if you want something, then you have to tell somebody that you want it. Mm-hmm. And so I just think it's time with an election cycle coming up and COVID restrictions and all that weirdness that's surrounding it. If you feel passionately, stop acting like you've already lost. Go out there. What would change if you started pretending that you were winning?
Wow, that's inspirational. So where can people learn more about Kira Davis?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Real Kira Davis, and go check out my podcast, Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. We engage in critical thinking on that podcast. That podcast is for everybody. You don't have to be conservative like me. That is an open invitation to all who are just curious and like to think through ideas. That's basically what I do. And then I write out over at redstate.com. And I think my website is ready today. Finally, it's justkiradavis.com, KIRA, and you can check that out. And it's kind of a catch-all for.
Well, yes, please check it out. And Kira Davis, thank you so much for joining us on the Matt Balaker podcast. Really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.